wiser as an educated advisor. Hello everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, all financial products have expenses. Part 4 in our series on Index Universal Life Insurance. All here on Let's Get Down to Business.
Are the ERISA regs worth it? I say no. If you really are in a high tax bracket or you're not getting a match, is it really worth being in a 401k, 403b, a defined contribution or benefit plan? I just don't see it. Penalties, you got to wait till 59.5. If you take it out early, it's a 10% penalty. And ordinary income tax on top of it. And if you're taking Social Security out, right, because you're maybe a survivor or maybe because you have a disability, then you got other problems to worry about. Penalties prior to 7.5. Do you know that most seniors do not know this? You have no idea how I deal with this off the show. The senior says, Steve, I turned 70.5 and I really didn't need the money, so I didn't take any. I said, well, then you got a problem. Because the required minimum distributions, the big word in the front is required. The big word, if you want an adjective for a simile, mandatory. Right? You have to take it out. You don't like to do that? I'm sorry, but you have to. And if you don't do it and you're past the 1 year grace period, 50% penalty. Now, I want you to know that nothing is more punitive. Listen, you're already a senior. You're already on a budget, right? Somewhat fixed income. And the government comes in and says, by the way, you didn't take enough out according to the required minimum distribution rules. Bang, 50% penalty. This is why when I talk about IUL, I never have penalties. I don't have RMDs, right? I just have to keep the contract in force. It's very important to look at this. Qualified plans, all of them, no exception to the rule, are includable in the provisional income test for Social Security taxation. All of them. I'm just going to keep saying it until everybody believes me. On the consumer side, and as advisors, and especially as insurance agents who may not be up to speed on the code. All this is taxable, there is no basis, and all of it's includable for Social Security. Now, everybody has policy expenses, right? There's no product that's free of any charges, right? So I have people saying, Steve, I'm into mutual funds. And I said, well, how much are you paying for that? Well, I looked at my brochure, and the actual brochure said I'm getting 80 basis points taken off for the expense loads. Okay, is that all there is? He says, well, no, I'm paying my guy another point for his registered investment advisor fee for him to manage it. Is that all? And he goes, yeah, that's all I have. Well, actually, you have an additional 144 basis points on average for a mutual fund for a statement of additional information. And if they're holding money in cash positions, especially in 2018 when we had kind of a rough market, a lot of mutual funds were a lot more in cash than they normally are. And you're losing about 83 basis points just for them to be in cash. I just want you to understand what you're getting yourself into. So there's charges. If you're in a qualified plan, guess what? They have to administrate that. And who are they downloading the cost to administrate your 401k? That's going to you as the participant. And remember, under these 3 codes that I've cited here, 408B2, 404A, and 404C, these are compliant regulations that you have to make sure that your head of HR understands this. They have to comply with this. They have to educate you. They have to bring you up to speed on what you're doing. They also have to disclose to you as a participant under 408B2 every expense load that's in there, including the investment and including what they're charging through their own administration costs. Now, this is just a tale of two cities. I pulled this from Forbes magazine. This is the venerable CPA Ty Bernanke, no relation to the former Fed chairman. This is a tale of two cities. If I have a non-taxable account, right, so it's in a qualified plan, I might be paying an average of 90 basis points in the actual brochure that you have to give to the client. I might be at 90 basis points. On the transaction cost, I might have another 144 basis points. My cash drag's at least 83. That means my cost inside a contract, and I haven't even put the administration cost on there, is about 3.17. So before you make $1, you have to clear 3.17, and that does not include if the IRA is charging you a fee. There's another point. You'd have to clear 4.17 in a qualified plan. So before you say, hey, I only pay 80 basis points, well, probably no. You're probably paying this. The next thing is the taxable account. Well, we got people like me. I have stuff outside of my qualified plan. I have mutual funds and ETFs. So I'm paying maybe the normal 90% expense ratio. I'm paying the statement of additional information, transaction fees of about 144. It could be less or more depending upon your fund. And I'm paying a cash drag of 83 basis points. And on top of that, I have taxes. Think about this. At the end of the year, the client didn't take advantage of the taxes. So he had non-qualified mutual funds just sitting there. And they took a loss. And so he was unhappy. And in January, he gets his quarterly statement, which is end of year statement, and it says, you lost money this year, and everybody's boo-hooing it. But here's the bigger part. Then a week later, he gets a 1099 for capital gain. Now, I just want you to think about this as a salesperson, as a marketing. I just got my statement from the mutual, and they said I lost money in my mutual fund for 2018. This is as an example. How can I, a week later, get a taxable 1099 for gain on a loser fund? But remember, all throughout the year, the fund at large might have lost, but there might have been gains on individual stocks within the portfolio. And guess who has to pay the tax on any capital gain? The end user or owner. So I can have people actually losing money, right, with mutual funds, and on the flip side of it, getting a 1099 a week later in late January. People who do seminars like myself, in January, we live on the hostile environment of clients being so unhappy with looking at a loser fund and then on top of it having to pay taxes. We have hedge positions using Index Universal Life to hedge against losses. Our expense loads, if you do it correctly the way I suggest and design it right, you're going to minimize your actual expense loads inside the contract, and you're never going to actually have losses on the crediting side. Again, you could have zero, and if you have to pay bills, you could lower it below zero and you would have a loss. But mostly it's hedged and it's good protection. Most people like the indemnification treatment. Now, in life insurance, I got my own expenses too. I got to pay policy fee. Got to pay administration cost. Some contracts call for a premium load. I disagree with it. I have since the day they invented it. It's just a loss leader, total carrier issue. It's not consumer centric. And of course, I have cost of insurance, which is the only thing I and my illustrators and people who do proposals, is the only thing we can alter. And I try to alter it by choosing the person in the family who has the smallest and cheapest cost of insurance based on their health. And then, of course, there's policy loans costs. Hey, you're taking policy loans out of your own policy? Yeah, but they're charging you interest on that. So you got to be heads up on that. And then if you're into VUL, Variable Universal Life, there's also sub-account management that you have to worry about. Now, in general terms, the average mutual fund and ETF expense loads versus a managed cost of insurance IUL breaks even about between 11 and 13. If a person told me he needed his money within the first 10 years and he wanted me to use an insurance policy, I'd probably have to say I can't do it. I don't have enough time. Do you guys understand? We need time. We need time to make this happen. Once I get past what I call the demarcation line between 11 and 13 years, I'm going to be way less in cost. And by the time I get out to distribution, I should be paying a point, and that's it. Most of these other contracts, mutual funds and ETFs, are paying way more than that. So managing it right, it should be undefeatable. Now, why take a risk tolerance test? Everybody always says, Steve, you're the only guy I know that talks about this on the air. You do this with all these clients. You make all your agents do it. Why? Because I have 4 different chassis I'm dealing with. One is participating whole life, one is universal life, one is index universal life, and the other is variable universal life. I don't know which one you qualify for. I don't know if it's which one's suitable for you. So I make everybody take a test. If you're married, I make you take the test in the other room, not in the same room with your spouse. I want objectivity. I want some empirical question. I don't want anybody feeling pressure from the spouse to say something different. I want you to just say what you feel. Now, a risk tolerance test, it's not totally science, okay? Just happy to say it. But it is a great psychological indicator. It's kind of my way of looking at your psychonomics. How do you look at money? How do you look at risk? So, I want to look at it for product suitability for clients on these 4 chassis. These are the 4 chassis that we sell. These are the 4 chassis. Remember, sometimes I can't sell Index Universal Life. Why? Because the client says, I don't want to experience any losses, so they have no propensity for risk. So I have to sell them participating whole life. If you're using infinite banking or what we sell here over at Gordon, you could be looking at this and saying, hey, I like the family bank. You know, I like your family bank. Well, that uses participating whole life. It doesn't use indexing. So one of these 4 chassis we'll choose after we have determined your risk tolerance. Now, I talked a little earlier about the 3 laws that changed in 80 when I came in here as a rookie into this business. In 1982, they changed the TEFRA laws, which were the FIFO, LIFO laws. Remember, first in, last out? This is when first in, first out, and last in, first out, sorry. LIFO, FIFO. So, but then they changed the DEFRA Corridor in 1984 check it out. And every time I tell this, young people go, how could that be? We used to sell a dividend option called accumulation. Instead of doing paid-up additions, we'd choose accumulation, and the accumulating cash value could actually go higher or supersede the death benefit. So when you're looking at death recorder, we had to invent something that defined, is this an insurance product or is this an investment product? And they forced our hand in 1984 and said, hey, from now on going forward, if you don't have the difference between cash value and the death benefit in any year that it occurs, right, you don't have an insurance policy. And if they don't have an insurance policy by definition, then it could be a taxable event or all the game. And the last thing, the 1988 TAMRA provisions. They came in to make sure that we don't put too much money too early in a policy. They know what we're trying to do, so they made us walk through or jump a hoop, run a hurdle, whatever expression you want to use. We've learned how to artfully get around it, and we're still doing a great job of actually doing this with this imposition on our design capabilities. But we have to be a heads up. The guideline annual or the cash value test is still in vogue. We have to do both tests to figure out which one will deliver the most cash, and I do it all the time.
Don't forget to watch our next segment on protection against market losses and taxation, part 5 in our series on Index Universal Life Insurance. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or compliance officer. And don't forget to subscribe to my consumer show, Steve Savant's Money, the Name of the Game. Daily content that you can post on your website, social media accounts, and database distribution. I'm Steve Savant. Thanks for watching.